I really wanted to try something that would be a little different with them just because it's being filmed. You know, it was something that they hadn't done before and that I'd had very little experience with. I wanted to see them create a three-dimensional piece that would involve their emotions, their senses, take it beyond just painting on a page. And I think they did that incredibly well today.
So we were doing the installation artwork out in the hall there, and we had to brainstorm ideas to what we would think would represent our grade 8 Toronto trip.
Marineland, medieval times,
Eaton Centre, shopping,
Hockey Hall of Fame, much music, Queen Street, the Royal Ontario Museum,
The Maid of the Mist,
Whirlpool Jet Tour,
the Hippo Tour,
Legislative Building.
Well, what about the flight? That can be a stumbling block when kids are getting started on art, because when they have trouble getting started, it's really hard to get them into their art so they can get it finished.
When you actually look at what you did, it's a lot better than thinking about the beginning on how you're going to mess up or how it's not going to look good. But when you look at the end, you can think positive about it.
I didn't really know what to expect from the idea. I hadn't really seen many installation pieces in my life. I saw 2 or 3 in the Art Gallery of Ontario.
So today for the lesson, we did a little review of installation pieces, and I had created a PowerPoint of just 10 samples of installation art so that they could see more materials that were being used and start thinking about what the artist was trying to get across and why that particular piece was presented. General expectations would mainly be the self-expression involved in this piece, like creating a piece of artwork that expresses their emotions. I wanted them to be aware of the place of installation art in the current art scene. So we have studied Impressionists, and we've studied the Group of Seven, and art groups and movements like that. But we hadn't actually gotten into installation pieces. I think it's really important that they see the transition in art thinking from realism to more expressing emotions, more feelings. Like the installation pieces are definitely thinking about things so differently. And I think that's an important transition for them to be aware of, that art has moved in that direction. We try to do monthly blocks, and those would be discipline-based. So, for instance, when we're doing watercolors, we spend a week and a half learning watercolor techniques. So they know how to do a wash, they know how to do the detailed work, they know the difference between working wet and dry and what brush to use when, and that kind of thing. And then I give them a piece that's sort of a transition piece. So they go from being directly guided by me to a piece that's their own piece, but they're using the techniques that I'd showed them. And then the last piece at the end of the unit is a think outside the box piece. It has to include watercolor, but they can include whatever else they want in it as well. And I find they respond incredibly well to that kind of a step process in their art. It's wonderful to see the artwork they create.
We just pretty much thought of the highlights of our trip and funny things that we did and funny things that we saw or heard, and we just took that and put it into art.
We're all going to, each of us is going to create an idea, all right? So each one of you has to contribute something to this. Stretch, reach for the other senses. Think outside the box on this one, all right? So you're looking for sound. You might be looking for smell. It's not just a visual thing. If you can work movement into the actual piece, that would be awesome as well.
We're gonna have a sidewalk going through the middle, and it's gonna say, "Jesus Christ, I'm alive" on the blocks, because there's a homeless guy outside the residence that we were staying at that he wrote that on the sidewalk.
Then we met together in small groups, and they had to collaboratively pull their individual pieces together so they could create a larger group piece. We've done a lot of group work in art classes where they have to compile their ideas, share their ideas with somebody else.
When you're working with a group or with a friend, you can compare your ideas, and maybe you can combine them, make them better. even switch them up if you want to. Because when you're looking at a piece of artwork that you finished, you're going to be thinking of what you wanted to see, not what you didn't want to see. And then your other person in the group could realize that there is something wrong with it, which would help you fix it.
We also decided when they were doing when we were discussing it, that we would have a couple of common things that would run through everybody's artwork.
I think blue would be a good one because like the Blue Jays colors are blue. Yeah, Lakewood's blue. Toronto Maple Leafs are blue, and then the back screen at Mamma Mia was blue, and then like it could represent the water at Niagara Falls and stuff.
Our common color is blue. Our common shape is a tall rectangle, and you can use it as many times as you want. And by repeating those elements, what are we creating in our artwork? Rhythm and unity, exactly. THM and unity.
We put glass with tissue paper, blue tissue paper on the windows for the windows. And then we were putting a light bulb inside so that it reflected blue because the blue is the common color. And then for the common shape, we used the rectangle for the building.
I remember most about the trip being in the Neil Wysick building since we were there for a lot of the mornings and nights. We slept there, ate there, watched a hockey game there. I think it was important because like without it, the trip wouldn't have been possible.
My teacher said that she's going to see if she can find a pump, like to start at the top, and it's going to come down over the umbrella. And then what I'm doing right now is subway cards, and they're going to be, what my idea was, me standing alone, because I almost got left behind when I was in Toronto with the subways. So I was going to show how one person on one side and then the rest of the group on the other being so happy, and I was showing a little bit of fearful because I was actually a little scared there. And after the water comes down, it's going to land in a puddle where it's going to show a reflection of the one person that's me going to be standing. And she had an idea about a grate, and that's going to flow down to like this one right here, the waterfall, and it's going to like pretty much map out the entire kind of journey. We're going to try something like that.
We had a bed that was representing the place we stayed. That was the Neil Wysick Center, and we tried to make it look like uneven and kind of dirty because it wasn't actually dirty there, but it was small, and that's how it felt, sort of.
The springs, kind of, in the
Bed springs,
mattress.
because that was all you could feel. You couldn't tell there was a mattress there, just the springs.
We had one member in our group who hadn't come on the Toronto trip, and he brainstormed an idea to like create a piece that represented how he went swimming. We would like import the towel from his idea into our building.
Another one of our group members, he made the bleachers from the Jays game, and he was going to put the 6 of us guys that put Go Jays on our stomachs, and he was going to have us standing on that. And then that went into another group's art. We put it into their Jays stadium, the Rogers Centre.
Another group member decided to put a hand representing the person that was writing like a phrase on the sidewalk that we experienced.
It went on the end of the sidewalk, finishing the last letter of the word, alive.
I think that with all the ideas combined to make the installation, it's going to turn out like perfect. It's looking actually really good right now.
Then your group piece, we're going to meet as a big class, probably out in the hall, and we're going to install it in that area where I have the big boxes and the cloth laid out. That's where our installation piece is going. They always have a reflection period after an art class. where they get to present their artwork and say what they were trying to get across and whether they felt they were successful or not, and use some of their art terminology. So again, that's something they needed to know before they could undertake, trying to communicate about something this large.
I think that the elements and principles definitely changed my views a fair bit, because half of it I didn't really know about and others I did, but it was at the same time a little more eye-opener.
In this particular piece, they were working predominantly with form, although you did hear the word shape being bandied around as well. They know how to balance artwork, and they certainly know how to get rhythm in it. We've worked with rhythm a lot, the repetition of various elements, which is what we were working towards with our common shape and our common color. I always, when I'm assessing their artwork, they end up with 4 marks. They end up with 1 for creative work, 1 for their analysis, 1 for their communication, and 1 for their technique. And I've just found that's the way that works best for me. It's a little bit of a shock to them when they come into my class and realize it's not just the creative work that's being evaluated. It's a learning process to get them to use the correct words when they're describing their art and to feel comfortable, communicating instead of just saying, well, I liked this color with this color, so I used it.
I have, for the last year, I've been thinking about career paths that I might be taking, and I've been thinking about architecture and photography and filming, and all of these, you need to realize not just about the one thing you're capturing or I guess making, but the things that surround it. Like with this artwork, there's yours and then there's a whole bunch of others behind it or around it, and it changes the whole view of it, I guess, when you see it. When I think about architecture, which actually is one of my main, I guess, goals, when you use art and visual arts, it helps create if you want to make, say, a building, you might want to change it so it's not just a building. It could be an original piece of art, I guess.
Now, they also have an opportunity to critique their friends' work, so that's part of their assessment of each other. They also have reflection pieces where they reflect on how well they did or did they achieve their goal when they were working with the art. And we lead into that in the beginning of the year by looking at the work of a master artist. We'll have either a screen, a picture on the big screen, or we'll have a big poster that everybody can see and discuss how that artist has used the elements, the principles, what they're trying to get across, what's our first impression of the artwork, what do we see in the artwork, would we like to own the artwork? All of those things are all part of the assessment that I do in an art class.
Yeah, you can just take from what you see and fit that with what you think would be what you could do.
In the computer lab, I saw a piece of installation that was, instead of being on the floor, just flat at eye level, it was up a bit more, which made makes the viewer, I guess, take more effort into looking at it. And I used that idea by putting ours on the box outside in the hallway.
So that creative process works very well for them. They get very, very comfortable with it. It's amazing how comfortable they are at the end of the year with talking about their artwork.
Okay, we're putting the Much Music sign here. And Shalane, can you pass me the umbrella? And it's gonna go somewhere around here. And the water is gonna run off here, hopefully, into something.
And the critical, we were actually very fortunate. We've been to the art gallery in Winnipeg this year as well. And the guides there, when we're doing a guided tour, actually do a critical process with the pieces that they're showing the students. And so they've got that background too. They've heard an adult talking in those terms about what do you see in this piece and what was your first impression of it. And, what techniques do you think the artist used? What do you think they were trying to get across? Or he's also done this piece. How would you compare that? I really like both those processes, the creative process and the critical process. I think at this stage in their little art careers, those are 2 processes they need to be familiar with. They work well. They may not consciously use those words, as they're working on their art. But if I come and ask them to be specific in what elements or principles they've used, they are able to identify which ones they've used. So that doesn't happen in September, so I'm really pleased to see it in June.